Great. Well, I'd start by thanking the previous speaker who's given us a fantastic vision into the future. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the technologies that we're helping to develop today that might help people develop some of those devices to fit into Tom's vision. So I'm the CTO for ACAMP. I've been in Alberta now for nearly 2 years, and we're starting to get some real traction in the market with the development of new products. I spent many years before that working in both micromachining and the semiconductor industry, so my talk today is going to be focused on what we can do in the way of micro and nanotechnologies to help people develop new products. And the main technology I'm going to spend some time on today I think is a very exciting technology for some near-term microfluidic medical applications. That's microfluidics. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about microfluidics today. I think there was a previous talk where you've heard a little bit about it already and its potential impact. And we'll talk about how we help people support the commercialization of new technologies at ACAMP, and in particular microfluidics. Then I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining that we do have some other technologies that are of great interest to medical devices, and finally I'll summarize. So, for those of you who are not familiar with microfluidics, and I hope I'm not repeating too much here, I always like to start with a definition of what we're talking about. So for me, microfluidics, and the definition I particularly like, is the manipulation, processing and measurement of fluids on a micro scale. And the size scales we're talking about here depend a little bit on what you're trying to do with the microfluidics. If we're dealing with a purely fluidic application that just manipulates liquids, typically the size scales are around about 100 microns. That lets you take very, very small samples, do some chemical processing on them, and then do some interrogation, maybe using an optical technique to figure out what's going on in the sample that's of interest to you. Sometimes if you're dealing with cells, this dimension might be a few hundred microns. You can actually manipulate cells suspended in fluids and do some clever clever processing on them as well. And you can also integrate other small particles such as nanoparticles, which carry various marker technologies on board. And in fact, we're doing a project like that for a customer right now. Another way to look at microfluidics is it's really only come about in the last few years because it's leveraging a lot of the modern manufacturing technologies that have been developed pretty recently, and particularly the ability to do consistent lithography over large areas and create these small structures in a consistent and low-cost manner. So you can create these structures. We can also integrate these structures into systems on a chip, which opens up the possibility of building almost a complete lab on a chip. And here's an example from a research institute in Switzerland where they've taken a chemical process that they want to run and integrated it all onto a chip and ended up with something they can then produce some analysis and do some useful diagnostics with. So why use microfluidics? I mean, there are existing technologies. I think somebody at the back asked the question, what are the benefits of these new technologies? The thing that's really driving microfluidics into the medical space is the ability to miniaturize things and turn them from objects, turn it from a piece of equipment the size of this table down to a handheld device that you can take out into the field or even to the point of care and carry out a diagnostic test, greatly improving the cycle time for the test. You can cut it down from days to minutes, and at the same time reducing costs and distributing the availability of the test to the actual user. So some of the things that Tom was talking about will need these kind of localized tests for various biomarkers. Sorry, let's go back a couple. Yeah, wrong button. Other exciting capabilities that microfluidics offers is you can vastly reduce the sample volumes you need. So again, for a critically ill patient or even a very small baby, you can deal with microliters of sample rather than milliliters of sample, which can be significant in some cases. You can achieve much tighter process control, so you can actually do some more precise diagnostics and get better yields from all your reactions. And of course, this ability of being able to integrate multiple processes onto a single chip and produce low-cost disposable devices which act as portable diagnostic laboratories. So can we really put all this on a chip? This is a typical laboratory. We've got to see a lot of infrastructure and hardware here. The answer is no. In fact, when you actually design a microfluidic system, you have to design usually two components. So the actual microfluidic chip itself is capable of doing some quite sophisticated things. You can put in little channels and valves and pumps to transport fluids around. You can mix things. You can carry out some very precisely controlled reactions with a very high degree of control. You can do various other useful functions, including sensing using microelectrodes or optical functions. But typically you can't incorporate a lot of the data analysis and some of the sample handling as well. So the microfluidic chip is generally complemented by a second instrument, which can be a portable handheld instrument, which contains all the expensive smart stuff, allowing you to make a very cheap plastic disposable chip for the microfluidic device. And this is where a lot of people are going. There's a lot of interest in these point-of-care diagnostic devices right now based on microfluidics. Microfluidics does have some other applications as well, for instance, delivery of drugs. So you can do smart delivery systems which can be attached to a person or even implanted into a person. You could combine one of these sensors with a drug delivery system and implant it into the body, enabling you to control long-term conditions. So there's lots of exciting work going on there, and I think Tom may have alluded to some of that as well. Okay, that's enough about microfluidics and what it can do for you. I'd like to say a few words about ACAMP as well and how we try to help our customers. So we were established in June 2008 with a funding of $50 million from the government. And I keep pressing the wrong button here, sorry. With a mixture of funding from AET and WD. The AET funding has been used for operational funding, that's approximately 50% of our funding. The other 50% has been used for capital funding to enable us to acquire key technologies that we know will help people develop new lab-on-a-chip devices. We hope to provide a path for commercialization of micro nanotechnology products, and we really work in three critical areas. We don't just do the technology, which is what I'm going to be talking about today, but we also help with marketing and business development. As a technologist, coming from a commercial background, I recognize that unless you know what product you're developing and the market you're developing it for, there's no point in even starting a product development project. So we're very, very keen to make sure that people have a sound idea, a sound business plan. They know what they're doing with the product, they understand the specifications, and they understand the market they're chasing after before they even try and develop the product. We also do obviously the product development, packaging and assembly side of the work as well, and that's the bit I'm going to be spending a little bit more time talking about today because that's my particular area. And we are hoping to help companies bridge the gap between that first prototype where they have that proof of concept idea or even a prototype they've taken out and showed to some customers, and the first profitable product sales by helping them with things like design for manufacturability and product development. Working with us we've tried to make it as simple as possible. Mostly we adopt a simple fee-per-service model. We simply depreciate our equipment and charge you for equipment depreciation, charge out our manpower at cost. We ask our clients to pay for raw materials and consumables in the project. Typically they're the smallest cost within the project, and most of the cost comes in manpower and machinery in development projects. We also offer our clients based in Western Canada, which at least includes Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta and British Columbia at a highly discounted rate. So we divide those costs effectively, the top two costs effectively by 3, so you get stuff at a very, very attractive rate. We offer our clients lots of ways to work with us. We don't try and be prescriptive in any way. You can come in and rent equipment. We'll give you a training course to make sure you don't break the equipment, of course, because it's pretty delicate and pretty high tech. You can use our engineering expertise to help you design products and set up process flows. And we'll also do some low volume manufacturing for you if you need to get samples out to market to demonstrate your latest product or application. We're also pretty straightforward on IP. If you come in with product IP, which typically is your design for your product, we don't want to take any ownership of that. You retain that ownership. That's important to the success of your company. If we do develop know-how, process know-how, which we often do independently of any of our clients by setting up our equipment, developing baseline processes, and essentially creating processes that we reckon a number of clients are going to use, we want to retain ownership of that process know-how so we can apply it to as many possible companies as possible. So you're basically coming to us as a subcontractor with some process knowledge and the ability to do manufacturing. And that would be like working with any subcontractor in any industry, in fact. So my baby is product development, and we have a strong focus on design for manufacturability. We really like to make sure that the products we develop can be transferred to high volume manufacturing as and when it's appropriate. So the gaps, we've looked a little bit at what's available in the region already. We also work closely with companies in the region. We don't try and duplicate anything that's out there. We're trying to create additional useful resources that enable people to develop micro nanotechnology products.